Shalom. All praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushua Ba'Shem Machakodash. Double honors to the apostles of GMS to give us his truth and all the spirity, and salutations to all the occupants pushing this word throughout the four corners of the earth, and sincerity in the truth. This is an article from Politico.com, and it reads, White House officials believe the politics are a lot better if Israel strikes Iran first. As the administration molds military action in Iran, officials argue it'd be best if Israel makes the first move. So, just as the scriptures say, we're going to get it, the least of the flock is going to draw them out. And here in GMS, starting with the apostles, they've been prophesying that World War III would start with Israel attacking Iran. And that's what we see playing out right now. And this is how you know we're the prophets of Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushua, starting with the apostles and elders. Because everything they've been teaching before YouTube, since they got on YouTube, it's all coming to fruition, man. So Barakatah Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushua for bringing these prophecies to pass, and to, make the world know who his true men are, right? This is Jeremiah chapter 49, verse... Matter of fact, I'm going to start with 15. Yep. Matter of fact, 14. Yep, 14. It says, I have heard a rumor from the Lord, and an ambassador is sent unto the heathen, saying, Gather ye together and come against her and rise up to the battle. Now, this whole chapter, well, not the whole chapter, but this section of the chapter is dealing with Edom, which Edom we know is the biblical nationality of the so-called white race. So the Lord said he's gathering the heathens, right? It says, gather you together and come against her and rise up to the battle. And that's what we see taking place. All the nations of the earth, they're ready to take down the so-called white man, You see tensions being stirred up over there in the Middle East region. And, all the tension is geared, against Israel and against America, which they're both Edomites. All right. The man calling himself J-ish is no different than the man calling himself European. They're one and the same, because they like to make that, distinction. Like they try to make it seem as if it's a whole different race when they're one and the same. Right. It says, for lo, I will make thee small among the heathen and despised among men. That's right. So the Lord has made you small among the heathen. Look at your numbers, dwindling. White births are below minority births, right? It came out in the news that officially so-called minorities, which are Israelites, are outnumbering the so-called white man, which is also proof that this is the new Egypt and that we're the Israelites. Just like how in ancient Egypt, the Israelites multiplied so much that the Egyptians panicked and they took different measures to try to wipe us out. So that's what's taking place now. And those different measures that they're trying to implement is, as you see, starting with ice and eventually, the different plagues through the form of famine, through the form of the sword, diseases, epidemics, chemical warfare. All these things are about to be used against our people, And second is the 15th chapter. When the Lord is going into the plagues that he's bringing on the earth, the Lord said, my people are being led as a flock of slaughter, as a flock to the slaughter. But he's not going to suffer us to dwell in Egypt, but he's going to bring us with a mighty hand and a stretched out arm and smite Egypt with plagues as before. So that mighty hand and stretched out arm represents the plagues, the miracles that Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushua is getting ready to bring to fruition, And Egypt being America will be destroyed. And this up and coming Third World War. This is the Lord's purpose, man. So it says, verse 16, thy terribleness have deceived thee and the pride of thine heart. Your terribleness have deceived you, man. Right? You've been able to terrify and horrify all the nations of the earth with your sword, because that was your blessing. Right? Genesis the 25th chapter. Esau, Edom, got the blessing of the sword and world domination. World domination by the way of the sword. right? So he's terrified everybody. And in that terror, his pride grew astronomically, which is why, you know, Trump, him doing what he did to Maduro with his terribleness, he thought he could do the same to Iran. But he's now finding out that Iran is not Venezuela. You see? So your terribleness have deceived you in the pride of your heart. O thou that dwellest in the cliffs of the rocks, that holdest the height of the hill. That's right. Thou that dwellest in the cliffs of the rocks. You know, these Edomites, these skyscrapers that holdest the height of the hill. You know, they're the chief nation, you know, out of all these different nations. You know, when you see Trump with the border peace, how he's in the middle, right? He's holding the height of the hill. That's why all these nations bow down to him, because they understand that. It says, though thou shouldest make thy nest as high as the eagle, I will bring thee down from thence, saith the Lord. And this is verse 17. Also Edom shall be a desolation. Everyone that goeth by it shall be astonished, and shall hit at his head all the plagues thereof, which is going into the coming destruction of America. Israel, you know, and all over Europe, there's going to be destruction. All right. So this is mainly speaking about America, though, because America is going to be made a desert. You know, that's the judgment for Babylon the Great. So everyone that passed by this place after they get destroyed, they're going to see no man's land, and they're going to be astonished. Like, this used to be America? Right? It says, as in the overthrow of Sodom and Gomorrah and the neighbor cities thereof, saith the Lord, no man shall abide there, neither shall the Son of Man dwell in it. So this place is going to be wiped out clean, with no inhabitants. Behold, he shall come up like a lion from the swelling of Jordan against the habitation of the strong, which is the Lord, Yahweh. Right? He's coming from the east. Right? It says, but I will, and the habitation of the strong is Babylon, America, but I will suddenly make him run away from her, which is, you know, the land of Israel. Right? The Lord is going to chase Edom out of that land. And who is a chosen man that I may appoint over her? For who is like me, and who will appoint me the time, and who is that shepherd that will stand before me? So the ones that the Lord is going to appoint over in the land is starting with Yahweh and his people, right? Verse 20, which is the point. Therefore, hear the counsel of the Lord that he hath taken against Edom, and his purposes that he hath purposed against the inhabitants of Teman. Surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. Surely he shall make their habitation desolate with them. That's right. So this is the counsel of the Lord that he hath taken against Edom. And this reminds me of the book of Job, how in the heavens you got the heavenly Father and the holy angels, and Satan is also amongst them. And they're making a counsel, you know, about Job. You know, have you considered Job? Right? And then also when we go to the book of 2 Kings, it mentions how the Lord had a council in the heavens on plotting on how to take down Ahab, how to get him killed and have him lose his kingdom. So this has been took place in the heavens, right? This is the counsel against Edom, and his purpose is that the purpose against the inhabitants of Teman. Surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. The least of the flock is those J-ish people, right? They're the least of the flock being the Edomite race as a whole. And within them, there's different tribes, just like there's different tribes within the nation of Israel. So the least of the flock, right? The least of the flock of Edom is Amalek. So Amalek shall draw them out. Draw out who? Those armies, right? Over there in the Middle East. It says, surely he shall make their habitations desolate with them. That's right. So their habitations. So wherever you Edomites dwell, whether it be Israel, America, Europe, wherever these Edomites are, the Lord will bring desolation by the way of missiles. But only America and Israel is going to be completely wiped out. But Israel will be rebuilt, you know, by the elect. Verse 21, it says, the earth is moved at the noise of their fall. At the cry, the noise thereof was heard in the Red Sea. That's right. So the whole earth is going to be moved at the fall of Babylon, at the fall of Edom. Isaiah 24 says what? The earth is going to roll to and fro like a drunkard. Why? Because of the violence and power of those missiles. This is Revelation chapter 6, Revelation 16. Matter of fact, see, this ties into it too. This is not what I wanted to give, but let me read it right quick. Revelation 6 and 12. And I beheld when he had opened the sixth seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood, and the stars of heaven fell onto the earth, even as a fig tree casteth her untimely figs when she is shaken of a mighty wind. This is going into the missiles. It's going to cause a worldwide earthquake, and it's going to black out the heavens, right? And it's going to fall in the arch fashion, as if when a wind shakes a tree. And wherever the direction the wind faces, that's towards the direction that the fruit is going to arch and fall towards the ground. So the missiles, they fall in the arch fashion from their trajectory, from, the countries they come from. It says, and the heaven departed as a scroll when it is rolled together, and every mountain and island were moved out of their places, which is going into what? The mushroom cloud. It's going to move the very tectonic plates and reshape the whole earth. And the kings of the earth and the great men and the rich men and the chief captains and the mighty men and every bondman and every free man hid themselves in the dens and in the rocks of the mountains, and said to the mountains and rocks, fall on us and hide us from the face of him that sitteth on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of his wrath is come, and who shall be able to stand? So the ones that's going to stand is the elect, right? Those are going to be the only ones to make it through these coming tribulations. All right. So war is on the menu. That's the only thing that's left. Well, one of the only prophecies left, before the Lord bring his kingdom, right? The mark of the beast is tied right into the World War III as well, because as war breaks out, the economy will collapse and they're going to implement the MOTB. And the scriptures say that once that is implemented, then the destruction is coming right around the corner, right? So, as soon as they make this chip mandatory, they're going to be ready to shoot the missiles, right? So it says, Revelation chapter 16, verse 16, and he gathered them together into a place called in the Hebrew tongue Armageddon, right? So we read in Jeremiah 49 how the least of the flock shall draw them out, right? So the Lord is using Amalek, Edom, to gather them heathens into a place called in the Hebrew tongue Armageddon, which is over there in the region of the Middle East. All right. And that's why we see all this tension going on. China's getting involved. Russia's getting involved. North Korea's getting involved. And eventually all the nations of the world will have troops in the Middle East for this Third World War. This is Joel chapter 3, verse matter of fact, Joel chapter 3, verse 1, for behold, in those days and in that time when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem, I will also gather all nations and will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat. Jehoshaphat is, the region, right? Armageddon, Armageddon, which means mountain of troops. That region over there, the Middle East, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Syria, Jordan, all that whole region is going to be nothing but war and bloodshed going on. It says, and will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land. So this is the Lord pleading, judging you nations for what you did to his people, Israel, so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, the slavery, the torture, the oppression. None of that has gotten forgotten about by the Most High. So he's coming to bring judgment. And as it goes into the different things that took place unto us. But I'm going to jump down to verse 9. It says, proclaim ye this among the Gentiles. Prepare war. So war is being prepared. This is why These nations are up in their military budget this year. America upped its budget from 800 billion to 1.5 trillion under Trump. So this is a sign of war, right? It says, prepare war, wake up the mighty men, let all the men of war draw near, let them come up. And that's what we see. Aircraft carriers being sent over there. You got, those Iranian troops, they're ready to shed blood, It says, beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong. At one point, Iran was weak as far as military technology. But now they're the most advanced military power in the Middle East, outside of Israel, of course, But the Lord has armed them up, and not just them. Look at North Korea, right? Look at Hezbollah. Look at Hamas. Look at the Houthis. Their capabilities have significantly increased over the years, because Iran has been funding them. So much so that last year, 2025, America, the U.S. aircraft carrier, had to run away from the Houthis. The Houthis won the war last year, and Trump asked for a ceasefire. He acted as if, he was victorious and all that. But no, man, they ran from the Houthis. They lost fighter jets fighting the Houthis, But, the weak have become strong. So this is why the so-called white man is going to have a hard time getting Iran and those nations in that region to bow down, because now they got some form of strength. It says, assemble yourselves and come, all ye heathen, and gather yourselves together round about. Thither cause thy mighty ones to come down, O Lord. So it's over there in that region that the Lord is going to cause his mighty ones to come down, the angels, right? So the scriptures describe vividly how when the Lord returns, the nations are going to be fighting each other. And pretty much they're going to leave the battle they have against each other to fight against the Lord on that chariot. So as the Lord returns, you're going to have these nations, in the midst of full-blown World War III. And then they're going to come together to try to fight Yahushua and their Space Force. That's why they got all this Space Force in America. I think France might have one. A few are working on it because they know what's coming down the pipe. Judgment, UFO invasion, and salvation of Israel, right? It says, let the heathen be wakened and come up to the valley of Yahweh-Shaphat, for there will I sit to judge all the heathen round about. So it's over there that the Lord is going to judge all the nations. Judgment day. Right? Put ye in the sickle, for the harvest is ripe. Come, get you down, for the press is full, the fast overflow, for their wickedness is great. Multitudes in the valley of decision, for the day of the Lord is near in the valley of decision. So we're talking millions and millions and millions of troops are getting ready to be sent over there. And those bodies ain't coming back. All right? So, hey, man, the Lord, hey, the word of the Lord stands firm, man. So Israel is going to attack first. And that's going to prompt Iran to strike back and, hit not only Israel, but America as well. And then now that's going to give Trump the justification. He's going to have the public support, some form of public support to go to war with Iran. Because right now, 80% of Americans are against going to war with Iran. Right? So they need something. And that's what Israel's going to do. And once they do that, that's their ass. It's near. This is Jeremiah chapter 50, verse 22. It says, a sound of battle is in the land and of great destruction. A sound of battle is in the land. We see the sound of battle is right now. America versus Iran. That's the sound of battle and of great destruction. How is the hammer of the whole earth cut asunder and broken? How is Babylon become a desolation among the nations? The hammer of the earth. America. Babylon the Great. Trump been bragging about Operation Midnight Hammer back in June of last year. how they bombed Iran's nuclear facilities. That operation was called Midnight Hammer, which is proof again that America and its army is the hammer of the earth. You know, they are Babylon the Great. They are the Edomites. This is, Rome and a reincarnation. So how is the hammer of the earth cut asunder and broken? How is Babylon become a desolation among the nations? So, the Lord is getting ready to do away with this place, man. The Lord is about to humble Babylon the Great. America, verse 24, I have laid a snare for thee, and thou art also taken, O Babylon, and thou wast not aware. So the Lord said he laid a snare for thee. A snare is a trap. So the Lord set that trap up, for you Edomites. He got the trap with the cheese on it, right? And he laid it right in front of you. And your greedy ass went right for it. Now you about to get, your neck snapped, right? So the snare being Iran, because they've been successful taking down all these other nations, or as they would call them, regimes, right? They've been successful at taking them down, with the latest one being Maduro, so they're thinking they're going to do the same with Iran. But that's the snare the Lord laid for you. Once you put your hands on them, they're going to have the full backing of Russia and China, which means that's World War III. And that's going to fulfill Ezekiel the 38th chapter, where the Lord basically mentions how Russia, Gog and Magog, Persia, which is Iran, Ethiopia, Libya, Gomer, which is Turkey, and Turkey right now is turning against NATO, right? So, the Lord working, man. It says, I have laid a snare for thee, and thou art also taken, O Babylon, and thou was not aware. Thou art found and also caught. You caught red-handed, because thou hast striven against the Lord. And the Lord said, what? Woe to those that strive against their maker. Any empire, every ancient empire strove against Yahweh Bashim Al-Shah by going against his Lord's statutes and commandments and against his people. And no other nation has done this more than the so-called white man. No nations have done this on the level that Edom has done it, right? So the Lord, verse 25, the Lord have opened his armory and have brought forth the weapons of his indignation. For this is the work of the Lord, Yahweh Bashim Al-Shah of hosts in the land of the Chaldeans. So the Lord have opened his armory. So all those missile stockpiles, those storehouses for those missiles, that is all the Lord's armory. All those missile cities that Iran has, that is the Lord's armory that he's going to open up and bring forth the weapons of his indignation. The weapons of the Lord's indignation is the ICBM nuclear missiles. When you see that come down, that is God's anger. And people are going to know it, man. Right? But yeah, that's pretty much it on this lesson. I'm going to keep it short. But yeah, man, the least of the flock, Israel, is getting ready to attack Iran. And they said that we could be at war with Iran as soon as this weekend. And I wouldn't be surprised, because these devils, they deal with witchcraft and worshiping these ancient deities. And we know that March is the Roman god of war. March starts on March starts this Sunday. So, hey man, Lord's will, these devils attack, and we could be up out of here. Hopefully, Lord's will, by the end of this year or next year, or however long the Lord deem it. But we know we don't have long. So with that, I'm going to close out and give all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahweh Shah Ba'ashim Chakodash. Double honors to the apostles of GMS to give us this truth. And salutations to all y'all can push in this word. Shalom.